Hey guys, so I wanted to make a casuals review on Silent Hill F, basically meaning that I got really invested into the story and the game itself, but I didn't really think I was like good at the game or got any sort of intuition into how to min-max or play the game well. If you're wondering why I'm using COD gameplay from the BO7 Zombies beta instead of showing the actual, game of Silent Hill F, that's simply because one, I'm kind of lazy. Two, this is kind of like my Gen Z jingling keys moment. You know how they watch like the reels or TikToks and you gotta add the Subway Surfers gameplay or something. That's what I'm doing because, well, I feel like the gameplay isn't really that crazy to be looking at. This is something people are gonna, if people watch my videos and my reviews specifically, which I didn't make many, to be honest, and I'm trying to maybe make more, this is something they're probably gonna have to get used to. I will say, I did not play the New Game Plus, but I did watch videos on the story. Spoiler warning, I guess. I feel like whenever I make these types of videos, I am going to be talking about spoilers. And I do want to give my rating first, just to sort of, just off the bat, explain how I feel about the game, and then sort of use the rest of the video to elaborate as to why. But anyways, I gave it an 8 out of 10, maybe just because of the fact that I didn't play the New Game Plus. So I don't feel like I can really confidently give it that rating, since again I didn't play a lot of what's supposed to be played, since the New Game Plus has different cutscenes and different story beats. So for the story and lore, I found it a little too vague on the first run. There was a lot of things that were left unanswered or that really didn't make sense, like why Sakako died immediately, what happens to the characters in relation to maybe real life, or if anything is real, who is the Fox Mask, what does he want, because I'm pretty sure nothing ever happens with him, like literally nothing happens. And one other thing is like, did Hinako actually die? It's sort of in reference, at least Perinko, that she's like dead, but it's not very clear. Obviously there is the first ending where it's heavily implied that Hinako kind of goes crazy. She starts consuming too many pills and goes off the deep end, kills some people at a wedding, and then runs off somewhere else. But I feel like that doesn't really answer a lot. There are certain connections I could make, but it doesn't overall explain anything. It's a nice twist. It's really interesting. It's very interesting. But those few seconds, minutes of cutscene doesn't do much for the entire. I played almost for like 18 hours or something. Obviously that's maybe a little too much based on how much I explore, but still, it doesn't really give much of an explanation, at least on the first run. The next runs do explain more, but it would have been really nice to have a few more explanations as to what's going on. I just really feel like they do not give you enough on the first run, which I just really didn't like. I like being able to piece together stuff. I don't want to like immediately guess what's going on, but I at least want to be able to theorize, and I didn't really feel like I could do that. Mostly felt like I was just pulling anything I could because I just didn't know what's going on. I did like the notes and documents. I was always excited to read them if I ever found one. It was very interesting to see what characters thought of each other, what they actually thought, like in their diaries, their journal entries, or little pieces that were going on in the real world, any mysteries. It was always really interesting to pick them up. I did really like those. While they didn't particularly answer much, they did build up a lot of excitement for me. I really wanted to know where they would lead, what they were referring to, so I did like them. After actually watching the story, I did find it a little underwhelming. While I like the themes of the story, which discuss sort of like gender roles, marriage, and Hinako's feelings towards them, it did feel a little, as I said, underwhelming. I kind of maybe expected something cathartic, some kind of crazy ending where Hinako kind of wins over it all or something, which didn't happen. And I don't think that's wrong. I don't think there's any problem with that. It is a story of Hinako sort of growing up and, yes, taking some, I don't know what's the right phrasing for it, taking lead or whatever, but at the same time accepting reality. But it is a little passive. I don't know how to explain it. I guess I just expected more. I think it's also particularly because when I finished my first run, in my head, I thought what it was trying to tell us was that it was a story of Hinako becoming addicted. So I started creating these really crazy ideas in my head about what was actually going on, what everything meant in the run, which were not true. And so I feel like I got this really dark storyline that I was really excited to like watch develop, and the alternative, the reality, wasn't as crazy. So I feel like it is partially my fault. But overall, the story wasn't bad in and of itself, but I did feel like it wasn't as exciting as I would like it to be. For example, the Fox Mask turns out to not really be a villain per se. He is technically a villain, but within the context of what's going on in the Shrine world. But in reality, he's just some guy, and it's just a dude that Hinako's gonna get married to, and that's kind of it. It also is revealed that, or at least it's highly implied, I'm pretty sure it's just revealed that what goes on in the Fog world and Shrine world isn't real, which I don't mind, but the problem is I don't really know what a lot of it means, which is my main issue. I wanted to have some kind of meaning, and I want it to be fairly obvious as to what it means. That being said, I will say again, I did not play New Game Plus, so I don't feel confident in how I'm interpreting this. So I am giving it leniency, even though I did find a lot of the unanswered questions or leaving it vague until you play it again. While I do find it annoying, and being lenient. Now, as for the combat, honestly, it was really clunky. Part of it I sort of attributed to being like, I assume, Silent Hill clunkiness. That's what the gameplay is supposed to be like. But another part of it just did feel wonky, and I didn't like it. Well, it wasn't bad, but I felt sort of neutral about it. It was just combat, really. I will say by the end of the game, I was exhausted by it. I just could not keep fighting. I think at the point where you're interacting with the dolls to reach your house at like the very end, and every single doll was just like waves of enemies, I was so done. I just did not want to fight them. I just couldn't. And it's one of the issues as to why I didn't play New Game Plus. I just didn't feel like fighting more enemies. I was just tired of it. That being said, I will say I did like that the movesets of the enemies changed a little bit by the end of the game, especially like the dolls, since you're always gonna fight dolls. So it is nice that they did change. The only issue was some of the enemies by the end just became pretty tanky, and again, with the clunkiness and how many enemies you have to fight, I was just bored. I was just so bored of whacking, especially the pregnant monsters, just whacking them over and over and over again. It's just so annoying. It becomes boring. Didn't really like it. I did like the counter gameplay. I'm obsessed with, like, I like to call them like precision / accuracy type gameplay. I always find those really fun. It's something that I really like, and I think that is one thing that alleviated some of the boredom in the combat. I liked looking for the little windows to counter and sort of learning the movesets, but they don't do it enough as to where, in my opinion, like for me, it's fun, and especially with the clunkiness, because you can't counter if you're in the middle of an action. It became a thing where I felt like I was too reserved with how I attacked and waited a lot, which I think also made it pretty boring for me. But then the alternative is, for me, if I just keep on swinging without looking for the windows, it's boring for me. I feel satisfaction in playing the way I do, countering, that kind of stuff. But overall, yeah, I was kind of exhausted by the end of the game. The combat was just meh. It was, alright. Now, for the puzzles, I was so-and-so with the puzzles. I feel like some of them were fine. Some of them didn't really make sense to me. I don't really know what it was. Like, for example, the Scarecrow one. I didn't think it was bad, but it was just this thing where it's like, I feel like it was never clarified, or at least for me, who was I supposed to be looking for sometimes? Like, it'll give you a little note, and it'll tell you about the way two characters are interacting. And it's this thing where it's like, so do I interact with the character who's saying this, or do I interact with the character who they're referring to, Like, it's a little confusing as to who they're talking about. And that happens sometimes with other puzzles where it's like, what exactly am I supposed to be taking from the clue? It might just be me. Sometimes I read way too deep into some things, so it could have been a me problem. Some of them I feel like, I guess, had too much involved. For example, the little box that Rinko left for Shu. Like, there were certain parts where it's just like, I wasn't really sure. I think it was the pie one that I was really confused on, where I was like, I know I have to involve fruits in the puzzle, but it's like, which ones? You know what I mean? I don't think they're bad, but I just feel like, for me at least, the puzzles could be a little confusing. But overall, I like the puzzles a lot more than I like the combat. Visually, I really liked the environments. I feel like I'm not the only one who feels this way, but fog is always just really cool. It's just, I guess as some people would say, a vibe or whatever. I liked the way the town looked. I liked how outdoorsy some of the areas were. It was also really interesting to see how the town got consumed by the growth over time. The shrine world was overall kind of creepy as well. I wasn't too much of a fan of the shrine world, but it was cool looking. I think the enemies looked cool. The designs are really creepy. I don't know if I'm missing something. I feel like a lot of times when I make these videos, I do try to make outlines, but for me it's like a little hard to put down my thoughts, especially when a lot of the things that would probably affect my judgment are things that I think about in the middle of the game and then I forget about it once I'm done playing the game. For instance, I just remembered in the combat talk about the weapons and the omamoris. It's just something that I just remembered. The weapons were all kind of the same thing. I think the only difference was really light weapons compared to medium weapons and heavy ones. My favorite were the heavy ones. The light ones were kind of whatever. They're really powerful sometimes, but kind of whatever. Medium ones, I feel like after trying out the others, they're just kind of underwhelming. Omamoris were cool. I think they really changed up how you play. I feel like some of them could be a little OP. For example, the one I like to use was the counter heal. And honestly, I just found myself getting rid of so many healing items because I just never used them. I just countered and I healed and that was it. But so I guess they did add a little bit of spice to the combat, but not enough in my opinion. Overall, it was a really fun game. I did enjoy playing it. I did enjoy, I guess, the experience. Maybe not the combat so much, but apart from that, I did enjoy exploring. I did enjoy reading the notes, trying to figure out what was going to happen. Maybe the story, as I mentioned, was a little underwhelming, but it was more so the ending for me rather than the actual development, in my opinion. That being said, I do think, again, as I didn't play the New Game Plus, I didn't experience a lot of it, so maybe my opinion would change if I played it. So that's why I'm sort of keeping the 8 out of 10 as a tentative sort of rating rather than a very confident one. Yeah, overall, it was a fun game. I think if you like games that have very dark, well, it's not like super gory dark, but it is a pretty dark game. If you like games that have those kinds of themes, then maybe I would recommend playing this game. But otherwise, yeah, it was a good game. I liked it. But anyways, thank you guys for listening to my mediocre review, and bye.